Welcome back, my little ghouls and goblins. Today, we're getting classic with it. Back to basics, back to our roots. We're gonna take a walk through the cemetery and up and around some haunted properties. I'm Taylor, your casual crypt keeper, and this is the top 5 unsettling ghost encounters that actually happened. There are so many scary things out there in the world. Let us know down below in the comments what you want to be hearing more of from top 5 scary. Let's dive on in. Number 5, the South Shields Poltergeist. Coming up first on this list is gonna be the story of the South Shields Poltergeist, a recent case of spiritual harassment. I love a contemporary ghost. We got too many ghosts from the Victorian era or like the 1800s. We don't get nearly enough modern 2000s hauntings. Anyway, in 2005, an anonymous couple living in England had begun reporting seeing strange things happening around the house. Their furniture would be dragged along the ground, which is odd, but stranger things have happened. Doors left open, again, bizarre. But it was when they'd come home and found the chairs stacked on top of each other, they began to suspect that something odd was happening. One evening, the couple was asleep, and the wife had been struck in the back of the head with a doll, one of her son's toys. When she sat upright, she found herself being pelted by an onslaught of toys thrown across the room, as if G.I. Joe himself was leading the offensive. Dolls and blocks thrown at them from the hallway. They tried to cover themselves up with the comforter, but found that whatever entity that had taken up residence in their home had other ideas, and they found themselves pulling back at this invisible force. This horrifying encounter would culminate in the husband waking up and discovering 13 clean red cuts all over his skin, and a burning, searing pain on his back. That same morning, the couple discovered a rocking horse that had been hung from the ceiling, a stuffed rabbit toy sitting at the top of the stairs with a box cutter left between its hands, unsettling things written on the walls. You know, stuff like "Go die" or "You're dead." Very clear cut. I gotta say, this poltergeist really has a flair for the dramatic, setting the scene like this. That's good environmental storytelling with that set dressing. Anyway, enough was enough, and after having lived through enough activity to fill the brunt of one of the bad Conjuring sequels, they contacted a paranormal investigator. These investigators claimed that they made contact with an evil entity that looked like a pure black void that radiated pure evil. Shortly after the investigation crew showed up, however, the haunting seemed to stop. Guess the ghosts got scared when somebody stepped to them. The couple has now gone on to live a normal, happy life, although they claim they have been traumatized by the events. I know I would probably never look at that stuffed rabbit the same way again. And my ghouls and goblins, if you're looking for more good content from us, well, hey, we've got loads and loads of that. We got ghosts, ghouls, aliens, government cover-ups, SCPs, and just about everything freaky under the sun. Let's keep going. Number 4, Kate Morgan. Our next entry is about the mystery of Kate Morgan, whose death has been a long unsolved mystery in American history. In 1888, the Hotel del Coronado opened in Coronado, California, just across from San Diego. It was as classy as a joint in the late 1880s could be, and upon its completion, it was the largest resort hotel in the world. Our story, though, doesn't start until 1892, when a young woman named Kate Morgan checked into the hotel, one room 304. She had told the desk she was there to meet with her brother, who was a doctor who was treating her for stomach cancer. However, tragically, 5 days after first checking in, Miss Morgan was found dead on the steps of the hotel of what looked to be a self-inflicted gunshot. Now, it would later come out after her death that for whatever reason, the story she had told the staff was all untrue, with an investigation suggesting maybe Morgan had been a con artist. What we did know about her is that she'd been married to a postal worker from Nebraska named Tom Morgan, and that Kate was believed to be visiting San Diego to visit her brother, who was a gambler, not a doctor. But, you know, they probably pulled in similar amounts of money. Doctors didn't even think that Morgan's gunshot wound was self-inflicted, as the bullet retrieved from the autopsy hadn't come from a gun Kate had owned. However, the case was never opened. It was officially declared that she took her own life, and that was that. It would seem that Kate Morgan, much like us, is unable to move on from this case, as she's said to still inhabit the Del Coronado to this very day around her former room, which has now been renamed Room 3327. Guests report hearing all sorts of bizarre sounds. Screaming, crying, wailing, laughing, all while staying in the room, reporting erratic and chaotic noises pretty much all hours of the night. Weirdly too, guests claim that while staying in 3327, the temperature of the room will change in bizarre ways, as if there'll be an intense, freezing cold front that lasts for a few short minutes and dissipates, or electronics malfunctioning. And this seems made up, but I did just get a cold, shock while reading through this, so she might be in the room with us recording right now, and if you are, Kate, Hope you're doing well. So is Kate's ghost still checked into the hotel, doomed to wander the property until the crime can be solved? We may never know. Number 3. The Black Monk. Our next story is going to take us down to England yet again, this time in lovely Yorkshire. The scene was 1966. The Pritchard family lived quietly and under the radar, certainly expecting no trouble and definitely not expecting to be haunted. They just moved into their new house and were settling in when they started to notice some odd, troubling things, all the usual signs of a paranormal haunting. Strange scratches, strange noises at all hours of the night, furniture shifting around. Those sound like the telltale symptoms of a poltergeist to me. They assumed it might just have been something natural because they've never seen a movie in their life, I guess. The mind just never wants to assume it's ghosts. It was as they were approaching a year of living in that new estate that the Pritchards truly became aware of what they had inadvertently welcomed into their lives. It seemed as if whatever entity that was haunting the Pritchard house had a keen interest in the family's younger members, primarily the young student Diane. On one occasion, she claims she felt herself being dragged across the hallway by her neck, and she even showed welts and bruises all over her neck afterwards. A red handprint was burned around her throat. Foregoing subtlety at this point, this is when the entity started to make itself manifest to the family, apparating as a dark-robed, hovering being that would appear at the family's beds during the middle of the night. Very ominous. A paranormal investigation was then called and found to be inconclusive. As soon as the investigators came, the haunting seemed to slow down, similar to what had happened in the South Shields case. Ghosts are just cowards as soon as you tell on them, eh? It seemed the Pritchard family had found peace, but the investigator involved was still bothered and continued to research independently, and discovered that the Pritchard estate was built upon the former grounds of a medieval rectory, and across the street from an old gallows where people used to hang out. After a little digging, he learned that one of the prisoners sentenced to death there was an old monk. The investigator suggested this monk's malevolent spirit was the evil entity that they saw wrapped in black, dubbing him the Black Monk. And from here, the case became a legend, eventually being made into a movie called When the Lights Go Out. Number 2. Esther Cox. Coming up next is going to be the story of Esther Cox and the haunting of Amherst in Nova Scotia. It's a particularly famous Canadian ghost story, eh? It's sometimes referred to as the Great Amherst Mystery, and it's plagued and piqued the curiosity of paranormal enthusiasts for years the world over. In the late 1870s, Esther Cox was living at her sister's house alongside her brother-in-law and their children. At some point during 1878, Esther was attacked by a male friend who had tried to take advantage of her, leading to a rapid decline in Esther's mental health and emotional distress. And shortly thereafter, Esther's condition would be made infinitely worsened by the strange paranormal experiences that began to manifest on the Amherst property. The Cox family would report strange noises all throughout the night, and Esther's body began to swell as she alternated between impossibly high fevers and deathly low chills. And shortly after this was when objects around the house would be reported moving. Oh, that's it. That's the telltale sign of a poltergeist. A little aside, guys, if you ever see your table moving across your living room, call the Ghostbusters right away. The family doctor who was visiting the Cox household claims that he once saw the words, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill," written on the wall by the headboard. He tried to sedate her, but discovered that it really didn't do much to stop supernatural doings. Stressed and out of options, Esther thought that moving houses might be enough to stop the curse. But sadly, whatever is haunting her had their hooks in deep, as the ghosts would follow Esther through every house she moved to. Evidently, the spirits found this greatly offensive, as one of the houses Esther would move to would burn down while she was staying at it, resulting in Esther's arrest for arson and eventual conviction. Esther pleaded that she was innocent, and even witnesses backed up this, saying that everything Esther had been claiming had occurred as she'd said. But the old "a ghost did it" is an argument that rarely holds up in court, and Esther spent a year inside a cell. She was released in 1879 and would find a husband and raise a few children, seemingly free from the curse that once sought out to destroy her life. And number 1. Honest Abe. Would you believe that one of the most famous and most reported ghosts in American history is none other than the great emancipator himself, Abraham Lincoln? Honestly, Honest Abe gets seen more than just about any other ghost. Since his assassination, there have been numerous sightings of Undead Abe wandering through the halls of the White House. Eleanor Roosevelt, of the Beatles fame, kept her study in what was formerly Lincoln's bedroom, pretty much just asking to bump into a ghostly stovepipe hat if you move into his bedroom. Roosevelt claimed that over the years she lived there, she could feel his presence and would sometimes see apparitions of him out of the corner of her eye. And while her husband was president, a number of other sightings would occur. A young clerk claimed that he saw Lincoln spitting striking image, clear as day, sitting on the foot of a bed polishing his boots. On a visit from the Netherlands, Queen Wilhelmina claims that when she was spending a night inside the White House, she was visited by Lincoln's ghost knocking on her door. Calvin Coolidge's wife claims to have seen her on more than one occasion as well. First ladies were really out there seeing Lincoln. Claims that she saw him with his arms clasped behind his back, lost in thought looking out into the Potomac River. Wise. Winston Churchill had said that during the Second World War, he felt like he could see Lincoln's ghost coming to when the country needed him the most, and he also shared the most direct encounter and probably the funniest one. Now, Churchill used to love to relax by taking a long hot bath while enjoying a cigar. On one occasion, he says he stepped out of the bath, took a cigar, and walked into his bedroom and saw a man standing in the bedroom already, giving him quite a shock. He said when he saw the man's face, he laughed and said, "Good evening, Mr. President. You have me at a disadvantage." He claims he saw Lincoln chuckle wryly, then disappear. Presidents Truman, Roosevelt, and Hoover have all claimed to have seen inexplicable things around the White House, claiming they were all signs of Lincoln. In the last few decades, however, reportings of sightings of old Abraham Lincoln have calmed significantly. Perhaps he's finally been able to move on, or perhaps he's just very slowly checking out the rest of Washington, D.C. There's a whole lot of tourist spots and monuments to work through, and maybe he just got really caught up on the White House tour. He's got all the time in the world now to check them all out. And that's gonna be it for this video, my ghouls and goblins. Thanks so much for checking it out with me. Creep on, creeping on, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
All good, all good. We all cough. I'll cough solidarity. Number 4.